for us to come together in this way. We thank you, Lord, that for everything that we've experienced today. Just waking up alone is a blessing. And so we want to give you all the glory because we know that we couldn't wake ourselves up. It's you that blessed us in such a way that showed that grace to us, Father. And so we thank you. We thank you that we were able to come here and fellowship and be able to talk on such a serious topic as the one that we're going to cover today. I pray, Lord, that your voice is heard and not our own. I pray that hearts are touched and that hope is found here in this sanctuary, Lord. Be with all your people. Bless us, Father, we ask in the name of Jesus. Amen. Okay, we're going to do our AIM Motto Pledge. I'm not seeing the people who I wanted to do it, so I'm going to have to do it. Let's start with our AIM. The Advent message to all the world in my generation. The motto, the love of Christ compels me. And our pledge, loving the Lord Jesus, I promise to take an active part in the youth ministry of the church, doing what I can to help others and to finish the work of the gospel in all the world. Amen, amen. All right, my young people, take your seats. All right, so what we're going to cover today is a discussion on depression and suicide. And we want to cover this because if we look at the statistics, if we look at the data, it shows us that, I wouldn't say what I saw, shows us that from 2017, we've seen the rates of depression and suicide amongst our youth escalating upwards quite rapidly amongst our young people. And so we wanted to touch on this, especially as we're coming out of this COVID season. A lot of you guys were stuck at home, and that might have increased some feelings, some dark feelings within you guys being stuck at home all day, having to do school virtually. It's not quite the same as interacting with people. And so we wanted to touch base on some of the things that you guys are experiencing. All right, my Padlet was not working, so you will not be able to join me online and send me your answers, so we'll just dialogue openly. All right, have you ever been depressed before? Can anyone answer that question for me? Have you ever been depressed before? Just raise your hand if you think you have. If you think you've been depressed before, let's raise our hand. Okay, see a few people, all right. Well, if you're thinking that you've been depressed before, are you able to communicate to me what depression is? What is that? What is depression? Yes, sir.
Feel like you can't do anything.
Could you say that one more time for us?
The depression is when you feel that the world is against you and nobody's there for you.
Okay, so you feel alone in a world that's against you. Anyone else have their own definition to what they believe depression is? Anyone else want to share? Depression? Okay, maybe you guys agree with his analysis. Well, depression is a constant feeling of sadness and loss of interest, which stops you from doing your normal activities. Different types of depressions exist, with symptoms ranging from relatively minor to severe. Generally, depression does not result from a single event, but from a mix of events and factors, okay? So, considering that definition, I want you guys to tell me what do you think the difference is between depression and sadness? How do you know when you're depressed or when you're sad? How do you know? Okay, I have someone with their hand up here. We can bring the mic to them. Can you raise your hand for us?
I would guess probably the prolonged sadness.
Okay.
Is the difference?
So if it's prolonged, that would be the key to let you know,
That's
okay, I
key
must
to
be depressed. This is not just sadness, okay? Okay, we have a hand up over here. I can grab her. Dana Lee.
Sadness is just like a one-time thing, like you feel it, you get over it. But depression, it causes you to like not want to do certain things anymore. Like you have no energy, and like it's like you're just living life without a purpose.
Very good, very good, very good. All right, does anybody else have any inputs they want to add before we move on? Okay, so very good answers. If this wants to work for me today. Can you, yeah. Oh, nope, that's too far. Okay. So sadness it's normal and natural to be sad at certain times in our life. Depression, this is a paralyzing disorder. As we saw in the definition, you have a loss of energy. You have there might be things that you tend to like to do, but right now when you're in a moment of depression, you just don't care about those things, okay? And it's prolonged, as our brother explained to us, okay? Very good. All right, so now, those of you who raised your hand and said that you believe that you've been depressed before, I want you to revisit those situations that you thought that you were depressed in. Considering these definitions that we just went over, would you say that you were depressed in that situation, or would you say that you're sad? If your answer has changed, raise your hand. Your answer has changed? Would you mind sharing with us?
I guess I was just experiencing sadness because it wasn't prolonged where I didn't feel like I didn't want to do anything. You know, it was just sadness, and people said, "Oh, you're probably depressed,"
Okay.
and stuff like that. But now looking at definition, I would say just sad, not depression.
Okay, okay. Are you willing to share the situation or no? It's fine if you're.
A lot of times, mainly dealing with death, loss.
Okay.
You know,
Okay.
you're feeling sad, but not to the point where you don't want to do anything.
Gotcha,
So.
gotcha. Okay. So he says dealing with different situations, for example, loss, death. He did feel sad, and I think generally we tend to think if I'm sad in such a situation, I must be depressed. But he realizes based off the definition that it wasn't prolonged, and he didn't lose a desire to do the things that he enjoys doing. So it must have just been sadness, which happens when we lose someone. Very good. Anyone else? Anyone else want to share? Okay, that's fine. All right. All right, so teen depression is it says being a teenager can be tough. There are changes taking place in your body and brain that can affect how you learn, think, and behave. And if you are facing tough or stressful situations, it is normal to have emotional ups and downs. But if you have been overwhelmingly sad for a long time, for a few weeks to months, and you're not able to concentrate or do the things you usually enjoy, you may want to talk to a trusted adult about depression, okay? So what we're gonna do now is we're going to have an open discussion. We have our speaker here with us today who's driven quite a way to be with us this afternoon. Her name is Samantha Robinson. She is a mental health counselor. She's working on her doctorates. We're gonna allow you guys to even talk to her afterwards if you guys want to share, with her. But she does want you guys to she wants this to be an open conversation. She doesn't want to lecture to you guys. She wants you guys to share with her, okay? So there should be some back and forth here. We're going to be covering depression, some of the results of depression, which can be suicide, but is not limited to suicide. We're going to be covering ways to deal with depression, what to do if someone tells you that they've had thoughts of suicide, what to do if you're having thoughts of suicide. And we're also going to be covering something that's vitally important for us on a daily basis, which is self-care, okay? So at this time, I'm going to open the floor to Mrs. Robinson and allow her to take over. All right, let's give her a warm welcome.
I didn't picture to be up on a podium today. Can everybody hear me okay? Okay. Yeah, I don't know how. Okay. So it's an honor to be here today. One of my lovely colleagues talked to me about how the depression rates around here have been increasing, and it's just really a good opportunity to have a discussion about really what this is. So we had just heard about some of the brief things that depression is, but I wanted to talk first about how we can make this place a safe place to have conversation. So as a mental health professional, whatever happens in this room stays in this room. It's between all of us in here. It's important for everybody to not necessarily talk about the experiences that are in this room today unless you ask for permission. Like, let's say you all are friends outside of here and you really wanted to have a conversation about, how I did or how you're feeling or anything like that. And just ask permission. Say, is it okay if I talk about XYZ about this conversation that we had today? I can't go out here and say, hey, like, so such and such talked about this and that. I can't do that. The only things that are limits, I guess, to say about confidentiality is if somebody has the intent to harm themselves or the intent to harm somebody else, my number one job is to keep everybody safe, and we would work together as a team to be sure that you are feeling safe. If not, we're going to have to talk to some trusted adults about that. And if somebody is being hurt by somebody else, that's another situation where I would have to make sure that everybody is safe. That's my number one job. So I know it's kind of strange to have somebody strange coming in and talking about something super serious. Does anybody have any thoughts on that? No? Oh, okay.
Able to, kids aren't able to really express what they're feeling with their parents, and they may feel like that we don't understand. So I feel like you being here is a really good thing, that the kids may need someone that's out of us to be able to express themselves clearly.
Yeah, sure. Does anyone, raise your hand if you're the kids? I'm assuming it's everyone over here. So is it weird to talk to your parents about things that are serious? Yeah. Even though we know that they're like our safest person, it's still kind of strange, right? So I'm one of those people that still thinks it's strange to talk to my mom about certain things. And that's normal, especially at certain age groups, right? Like, how old are you all? Right, so you want to be by yourself and deal with the world on your own, right? You're getting ready to jump into this new world of adulthood coming up soon, right? So, yeah, that's completely normal to be like, oh my gosh, I don't want to talk to them about this. But there's a certain point where it's important to talk to an adult who you trust and love about how you're feeling and what's going on, depending on the situation. Someone had their hand up over there.
And to piggy off of what she said before, they might be reluctant to talk in front of us right now, you know, so just be aware of that they might not open up because the parents are here.
Yeah, and we're not
That's
looking,
normal.
Yeah, I'm not looking for anybody to open up about their whole life story, but what I'm looking for is a conversation just so everybody understands where they can go to for help, what they do when they're feeling certain ways, because all of this is something that could be helped, could be healed, could be treated, especially if you're talking about depression versus sadness. We have a hand up.
One of the things that's been expressed to me quite often from my own students is that they said that when they express some of their thoughts or feelings, their parents don't believe them or don't accept it, or just tell them that they're being foolish. Why should you have to be why would you be worrying about anything? You're so young, your life is so easy. And so that's another reason why they might not feel comfortable to go to their parents if their parents is not going to take what they're saying seriously.
Right, yeah. Did you all hear that? That's super validating, right? Because sometimes like parents freak out about certain things that people share, and that's because they're freaking out in their own emotions, not because they're dismissing you, and not because it's like out of like malice or anything like that. It's because they don't know what to do with that, because it's very heavy, especially if we're talking about depression. And another thing is that parents also have these experiences that they think that their children are okay and happy, but sometimes their kids mask it. Sometimes their kids don't show what they're truly feeling, because it's scary, especially thinking about something as scary as suicide. So I just wanted to talk to you about a little bit more about depression. So some people said earlier today about how there's a difference between depression and sadness, and that's true. There's a big book that mental health counselors use to help diagnose mental health issues, mental health illness, and mental health disorders. And there's certain symptoms that happen. Does anyone know what a symptom is? So if you had a cold, the symptoms that you have when you have a cold is like what? Stuffy nose, headache. Yeah. Maybe, yeah, if you have the flu, anything like that. So anything with mental health has symptoms just like anything with physical health. Things that come up that tell us that something's wrong. Some of those symptoms were discussed in the definition, right? Like a prolonged feeling of sadness that happens for, I don't know, months, weeks, depending. Feeling tired. Somebody mentioned earlier that they just, have no energy and not feeling like they want to do anything. That's a symptom of this bigger problem called depression. So some of these questions that you can ask yourself, and everybody in the room can also ask themselves about this if you're really experiencing something, is, do you feel constantly sad, anxious, or empty, like feeling nothing? Do you feel hopeless or like everything is going wrong? Do you feel like you're worthless and you can't be helped? Do you feel guilty about things? Do you feel irritable? Like irritable meaning like angry, annoyed, like, oh my God, like more of the time, like, oh my gosh, like I don't understand why I'm so angry or tense or annoyed. Do you find yourself spending more time away from your family and your friends? Are your grades dropping? Have you lost interest or pleasure in activities and hobbies that you used to love? How is your eating and sleeping habits? Do you eat more? Do you sleep more? Do you eat less? Do you sleep less? Either one of those is a sign of depression. Do you always feel tired? Like when you wake up in the morning, you're just like, oh my gosh, I'm so tired. I don't understand why I got 12 hours of sleep and I'm still feeling this way. Do you feel restless or having trouble standing still? Like fidgeting, maybe moving your hands around, maybe having difficulty sitting down for a long period of time. Do you feel like you have trouble concentrating, maybe in school, maybe at work, maybe you're really deep inside all of your thoughts, not able to be present with everything in the moment? Do you have trouble remembering information? So sometimes these big mental health issues impact the way that we remember things. I know in my experience, I forget the littlest things because I'm so inside my head that I can't hear anything outside of my head, right? And mental health professionals can have mental health issues too. So just wanted to just say that out loud. Do you have aches and pains without any medical issues? So like sometimes people get headaches, sometimes people get stomach aches. I don't know, parents, if you've ever heard your kids say, oh my gosh, I have a stomach ache and I can't go to school. Have you all heard of that? Yeah, that's a sign that there might be something mentally going on. Cramping, stomach problems, constipation, any of that stuff could be really big into mental health issues. And have you ever thought about dying? Feeling like you don't have a purpose. There's a difference between thinking about death, like as a concept of death, like, oh, well, here's the dying process and this is what happens, and you get really sick and then you anything like that. But like in the moment when you're thinking you want to die to get rid of your pain is another sign. It's actually very normal to think about things like that, like thinking about how life would be without you, or thinking about like I'm in so much pain, I need to escape my pain. There's a difference between those thoughts and actually intending to harm yourself. And I'll go into that in a little bit. So those are some of the questions that you can ask yourself and ask your kids. Having open conversations about it is really important. What's going on? What do you see over there? Are you on social media? That's fun. Are you all on TikTok? You're on TikTok? Yeah.
That's one of the questions I had. If you don't mind, can we ask questions?
Yeah, yeah.
So I had a question. One of the things that I wanted to find out, like these are symptoms, right? So I would say that symptoms are, I'm saying symptoms are probably something that is the result of something that is a core, something that is happening. In other words, because you sneeze, that's not what the disease is. That's not what you're suffering from, right? It's something inside your body that's toxic, right? So when we talk about symptoms, how much of this is related to things such as pressure from friends, social media, TikTok, Facebook, Instagram, or any of those type of things that cause these bouts of depression or that cause these bouts of sadness? Because I do know in our society today that when we talk about teen suicide and you see that all of this, it's a very, I mean, it's very rampant. And it's a result of not having any type, I feel as though, not having any kind of relationship, you know, where you can talk or dialogue. The only thing you talk to is your phone.
I don't think there's a cause. So like you don't want to say like social media is causing my kids depression. You don't want to say that because there's multiple factors. There's genetics, family history of mental health issues, body changes and hormones, you know, like puberty and growth and life transitions. You don't want to specifically blame anything for this bigger issue because it's an issue that's there and needs to be validated.
Right. So let me remove the stigma of blame. Okay. Let me just ask the question then, what do we look at in today's context? Not looking at what happened when we were 13 years old, 25 years ago. I'm looking at what young people deal with now in the COVID environment, with quarantining, with peer pressure that exists today, with what happens today, coupled with, I guess, genetics and all the other things that you named. Is there a higher rate that's going on now than it was before?
I think it's always been there, but we're talking about it more because of the COVID environment. So you can always ask the kids, you know, like, do you all feel more depressed now because COVID is here? And because you're not able to connect with your friends and because maybe your schooling is different and maybe like this has happened for the past year where you feel like an excessive amount of sadness, right? And the only way that you feel the need to connect, the only means to connect is social media now. Do you all see, is that kind of right? Yeah, okay.
At the school, one of the things that they did say was because of this new modern day life of the social media lifestyle, the pressures from that is what's causing, or can cause, I guess I should say, some of the depression.
I mean, yeah, but there's more to it than that.
So when, can you, I guess, clarify for me, when you say not to blame it, you're saying not to isolate it to one thing?
Yeah.
Okay, okay.
Yeah. Because it could come from anywhere. And I know in like my generation and up, being on social media is a kind of weird situation because you think that connecting with people in person is a great way of connecting and not having like the pressure of being a certain way on the internet and not understanding this world. But there's really good things about it, you know, like there's really good things to social media, like connecting with people and being your authentic self on the internet. And there's only like, you know, like it's important to have conversations with the kids about safety, because there's lots of terrible things that can happen on the internet, and also having conversations about being your authentic self in all areas of your life, on social media, in person, at school, at home, at church, at the grocery store, like making sure that you're having those conversations with the kids about being your true self.
So thank you for that. I'm sorry, I just have, just a question. So my thing is that you mentioned something, being your authentic self. In sessions that
because they don't know how to navigate their authentic self. And that's where the conversation from the parents come from in okay, this is what this means. Because the kids don't know unless you talk about it.
Okay, so now, and again, I'm just questioning. So this is why I say I want to deal with the context that we have, because you're speaking to mostly an African American society where mothers and fathers work full time, and that they're not at home at all times, and therefore many of our young people are by themselves. And so to express my authentic self, I can't have a conversation with mom again. Mom works an 8-hour shift here, dad works a 12-hour shift here, and in the midst of that, I have 1 or 2 friends who do this or that. So in the search for my authentic self, I don't have someone I can conversate with except for my social media platform. So I always want to look like a Khloe Kardashian, or always want to look like whoever is out there. You know, I'm not on there as often as the young people are. But in the search for that authentic self, how is it that we help to find who you are authentically as young people, as a young African American male, or as a young African American woman, where you can have pride, you can be proud of who you are. You don't have to change your hair in order to accommodate what you see on social media. You don't have to change your body type to accommodate who you are or who this is on social media. You don't have to, be someone.
Yeah, no, I get it. So it's validating the experience. You know, it's validating that you see them, even though, you know, there's lots of things going on, like seeing them and what their experiences are, and telling them that, you know, and sharing that information, that you are you in your authentic self. And it could take like 5-10 minutes, you know, and I understand that there's a lot of busyness with working and not being around and with social media and things like that. But that quick blurb that you just sent to me could mean a lot to the kids. Just that quick little like validating statement. We call validation in psychology or whatever field I'm in all of it basically. The idea of acknowledging that they have feelings and that it's there and not ignoring it. Basically, in a nutshell. There's more to it than that. But everything you just said, like, if a kid were to hear that, their whole world would light up. If you were to hear that from your parents, how would you feel? What he just said, how would that make you feel? Like a little warm inside, right? Yeah. And that really makes a world of a difference. If, you know, parents are able to just say all of that in a quick second and continue, like, it's like planting a seed so that the seed can grow in the brain, that they are worthy and that they are loved and that they don't have to be, who's the most famous TikToker right now? Yeah. And to use social media as a way to connect with people who are real in real life. The internet friends are kind of scary, you know, because, like, you don't know who they are. They could be like a 40-year-old man trying to prey on somebody, but, you know, internet safety is important. But yes, there's like a whole thing with like genetics and environmental circumstances that causes these big things to happen, but we can't change those big things, you know, that the causes, but what we can do is validate their experience, get them treatment, talk with them, making sure that they're exercising, having them connect with friends, and self-care. 101. And self-care is not a luxury, it's a priority. It's something that we, in social media especially, makes to be like, oh, you can take a bath with like rose petals and then go get your nails done and then you'll feel better. But that's not true. That helps, you know, it helps buffer that. But like self-care is getting up and making sure that you're put together for the day, acknowledging that you're feeling sad, sitting with those feelings, and doing what you need to do to help bring yourself up. So with depression, it's paralyzing. So like they say that anxiety is paralyzing, but depression is more paralyzing. It's like this, like, I don't know how to describe it. It's kind of like this like black cloud of rain without an umbrella that goes over somebody, and like the lightning's hitting them, the thunder's hitting them, and like it's like the weight of the world kind of just being on their shoulders. And you know, it happens. It's a chemical thing that happens in the brain, because you know there's a mix of genetics and then the environment. So if the environment is lined up correctly, then that turns that light switch on for depression. Then that's kind of how it goes. It's like me walking over to the light switch, like pretend I'm depression right over here, right? And I were to go and walk up to the light switch and be ready to turn the light off. So something in the environment, I don't know. Does anyone have an example of what makes them sad? Like anybody? Anything? What? Chores. Okay. So if me, depression is like at the light switch with my finger on the thing like this, and then parents say, oh, you got to do your chores. Oh, boom. I turn the light switch off, and there's the depression. That's just how quick it happens. You can turn the light switch on. No, I can't turn the light switch on because I'm the depression. But like you in yourself can turn the light switch on. Does that make sense? Okay. Yes.
Switch. If it's supposed to be a prolonged, thank you.
Yeah.
If it's supposed to be a state of prolonged sadness and uninterest in certain activities, how can it be changed from going good into instant depression? How does that
So
work?
the brain has this thing, like it's really cool. Give you a little neuroscience here. Neuroscience is the study of the brain. The brain has this ability to be flexible. What that means is that certain parts of the brain sends messages to other parts of the brain, and that's kind of how depression is. It's like a certain message sent to a certain part of the brain. I'm trying to explain this as best as I can without a slide. So the brain is flexible in change. It takes time, but if you get the proper treatment, if you take care of yourself, if you start to practice and cultivate gratitude and connection with God and all of those other really awesome things, then it starts to change over time. It's called neuroplasticity, the brain's way of changing the story over time, which is cool. So the younger you are, the more flexible your brain is. So if you're 16 and you're feeling depressed, you can basically snap yourself out of it over time. And then if you're older, it's still possible, but it takes a lot more work because the brain is already at this place of homeostasis or balance that is a little bit harder to crack. Like if I were to talk to somebody who's 90, it's a little harder to crack, but there's still that flexibility in the brain up until the day you die, from when you're born. And the cool thing about being a teenager is that at 17, the brain just kind of deletes all the things that are not necessary. So if you start putting in those like self-care practices and exercising and talking to people and getting help and I don't know, all those other really awesome things, then the depression stuff could just be deleted, just gone. Because you've built better connections in the brain to the parts of the brain that say, hey, you don't need to be depressed. You're okay. Everything's good. So, but it's process over time. It's not like a quick thing like me saying like, I'm turning the light switch off. that's quick. But the ability to change your brain over time is definitely possible. Depression is treatable. Both of you had your hands up. I don't.
What causes the brain to delete the information?
It's called pruning. It's just a brain process that happens at 5 and 17. And it's because there's just a lot of information in the brain that ends up not being used. So at those 2 stages of life, the information that's not used gets deleted. It's kind of cool. And after that point, you're able to change the way that your brain is, but that information that was there is still there, but it's not as big. Because you've developed like a sense of self-care and gratitude and connection to God and self-care and changing the way you think can ultimately help that situation. So the 2 things that you can control in this depression thing is the way that you think and what you do, like physically. You can't change how you feel because the feelings are there for a reason. I think of feelings as messages from our bodies telling us that something's wrong or something's going on and that we need to address it. But it's like in my therapy sessions, I help people challenge their thoughts and their core beliefs that are intrusive or not, basically lies, that just come up for whatever reason it is. It's a complicated phenomenon, but it's a pretty cool thing that depression and anxiety are super curable. It's just that there's a lot of people who don't talk about it, and that's why a lot of people suffer from it. If there's like a huge family history, like huge, I would suggest like medication management because that can help bring the levels of depression. Like you go from like nothing up a little bit to know what normal is. And then when you know what normal is, you can then implement self-care and changing the way that you think and therapy and stuff like that to then be able to come off of those medications. So it just depends. Like, I wouldn't say that medication's a lifelong experience, but it's something that can help alleviate some of the distress that somebody feels. Let's see. So how is depression treated? So psychotherapy is, sometimes we call it talk therapy. It's basically a professional who's trained in treatment of mental health issues to help identify and manage troubled emotions, thoughts, and behaviors so that then and a space to vent. Sometimes venting is really helpful. Do y'all find venting helpful? Yeah, so it's somebody that's outside of family or friends, somebody who's non-judgmental, somebody who is trained to help kind of navigate all of that stuff that somebody's carrying. These people are licensed professionals who go to school for a long time. I'm still in school, so I can't say. But you would have to get your master's degree, and then after your master's degree, you would then practice for 2 years as an intern, and then after that is when you get licensed. So that's high school, 4 years of college, 2 to 3 years of school, and then 2 years. So that's like 8 more years of school after high school. And then there's also medication management. Research shows that the treatment of depression is best with medication management and psychotherapy because of the levels of depression that someone might feel. The more intense the feelings and the symptoms, the more likely you need to get medication involved. There's certain medications called antidepressants, and what they do is you take the antidepressant and it helps those hormones that tell the brain that hey, this is depression speaking. It kind of blocks them from talking in your brain so that then you can then logically think about things. Like it's just like like a thing that says stop. That's how I like to describe it. Because medication's like really intense. No medical professional, but that's the best way I can describe antidepressants. Do you have a question? It helps lower the symptoms, the intensity of the symptoms, so that then you can address the core issues. Yeah. So, like, some people do take it as a Band-Aid because it does help. But the best treatment that you can get is both therapy and medications. So it's kind of like taking a Motrin for a headache. It kind of masks it for a while, but then it comes back. But then, like, if you have Motrin plus, like, a PT for your neck or a chiropractor and other things like that addressing the core, then you don't need it anymore. Yeah. So suicide is, I'll segue into suicide. So suicide is thoughts of hurting yourself to the point of not existing or living anymore. It's a symptom of a bigger problem. And the people who complete suicide are in so much pain with their depression, any sort of other mental health issue, and they have no other way of dealing with it. So how can you deter it? Like, if you are thinking about a plan and having a way of attempting suicide, then that's when you need to talk to somebody, to a friend, to an adult, to really anybody, to just release some of that. And it's okay to talk about suicide too. It's not taboo. It's unfortunately a taboo in society, but it's not a taboo because everybody's life is worth living. It's just that there's so much pain going on that needs to be addressed and validated. So you want to never ignore a comment about death or suicide. You never want to ignore it. You want to validate it, and especially the kids who are here, who hear that from their friends. You're probably the first ones to hear it, you know, like the kids. So like, let's say like your best friend comes to you and says something like, I don't want to live anymore, and you don't know what to do with that. Has anybody had that experience in the kids? Yeah. Yeah. So like, you're probably the first to hear it, and then the parents are probably the last to hear it. So you want to remember, if you're in the situation where your peers are talking to you about that, you want to just be sure and supportive, you know, being supportive and asking them, hey, it's okay, I got you, but how can I keep you safe? Because that's a big responsibility, right? Like, it's kind of like a really big thing that somebody shares with you and nobody knows what to do. So you want to remind your friends that getting help is important and that you're here to hold their hand in whatever they need you to do and be supportive with. Yes.
If a friend say to you that I don't feel like I want to live anymore, and what should they do with, you know, another young person? Should they report it?
So I would first address the situation of hearing that and tell that young person to say thank you for sharing that with me, and how can I keep you safe, and coming up with a plan together to keep them safe. And then the young person should then tell an adult, but they should tell that person that told them that they're gonna do it.
Yes.
Because you don't want to go behind their back and say, hey, like, this isn't
right.
Yeah, because then
It made the
they're going to
situation
feel
worse.
even more freaked out about that situation because they shared something super vulnerable, and, you know, who knows what's going to happen. And that's a vague statement, like what you said. It's a vague statement in that I don't want to live anymore. What does that mean? So if they tell you then, if the young person says that to the other young person, then, supporting them and saying like, hey, like, it's okay, you're going to be okay. I understand that you're feeling really sad. How can I keep you safe? And then if it's to the point where the young person tells another young person that they're going to take 15 Xanaxes at 2 o'clock in the morning when mom and dad are asleep, that's a whole nother problem, right? Then that person has to go and tell the adult, and then the adult has to call the police, and then the police need to come and do a wellness check, and then the police does the wellness check, and then they determine if they need to go to hospitalization at that point. And the hospitalization isn't to say that you're crazy, it's just it's a pause so that then everybody can get their stuff together to then be able to help the young person. And it's a watch so that that young person doesn't hurt themselves because they're in their emotions at that point. So yeah, it just depends on the statements. But like if I were a 16-year-old kid who heard that from somebody else, that's what I would say. I'd say, how can I keep you safe? Because I love you, and you mean everything to me, and I know and I understand what sadness is like. I know and understand what depression is like. And I know what it feels like to not want to live anymore. So how can I keep you safe, and how can we be safe together? And come up with a plan.
Yeah. Earlier, I wanted to say that it's wonderful that the young people are here, and thank God some of the parents are here with young children. I look back at my life, and I said, with my daughter and my son, my daughters and my son, I said I was rigid. I was a rigid mother. And I sat here and I said, oh, my children, they're pretty good because they live with me. And I'm just saying that parents need training, just like they're here sitting here, because we have problems too, not only the young people, because we don't deal with situation in the way it should be dealt with.
And then in parents' generations, you weren't allowed to talk about certain problems. So you've had to keep it to yourself and just deal with it and suck it up, because then your parents were probably like, okay, no, there's no such thing as mental health issues. So now in this culture, the young kids are teaching us how it's okay to share vulnerable things, to share that they're struggling. And it's a brand new phenomenon for everybody who's older, because like back in the day, there wasn't talk about this stuff. But I'm sure there were thoughts about it.
Yeah.
I'm sure that those feelings were there. I'm sure that the thoughts were there, but there wasn't help. Like now in 2021, we have like the most people in therapy that I've ever seen in the world. And like that wasn't accessible back then.
Yeah.
And then communities who haven't been able to access therapy are now able to access therapy. It's like we're all online and take insurance, and some people do it for free, and some people, non-for-profit agencies are up there, like sliding scale, like everyone can go to therapy. So yeah.
I see my 11-year-old grandchild, I see how she expresses herself. And also my daughter does a journal, and she also has a journal that
journaling
which is so good, where you can express yourself, what's going on.
Yeah, and then making sure that everybody knows that journal is private, so that like parents aren't looking at it and friends aren't looking at it. It's great. So if anybody is, yes.
What she was saying about the parents not really realizing it, I feel like it happens a lot in Caribbean households, because you're not allowed to be like, not saying you're not allowed, but it's weird for them.
Yeah.
Because like, what is stress? Like, what are you stressed about? Like you have school, go do your schoolwork. It's like, you're not allowed to be yourself around them, because they think it as like weird and like.
Yeah. It's a
That too.
culture, right? Like it's a difference
Yeah.
in culture.
I remember telling my mom I was stressed, and she just looked at me like I was crazy. She was like,
What do you have to be stressed about?
Yeah. Yeah. And young people are teaching us more about culture than anybody's ever learned. Like, I learn more from my younger patients that I have than I've ever learned in my life. So yeah, like it's learning how to navigate culture and being able to validate your own experiences, because like, yeah, you might be depressed and that's okay. Yeah, you're stressed, that's okay. And parents to have conversations with parents about like, hey, this is what I'm feeling. How can I help you learn about that? It's definitely a huge culture shock for a lot of people to talk about mental health issues, and to be vulnerable. No one wants to be vulnerable. It's scary, but it's important to address what your needs are. So, back to the suicide stuff. If anyone's posting anything on social media about suicide, about harming themselves, streaming suicidal behavior, that's when you call the cops, like right there and then. Like if you're on TikTok and scrolling and you see somebody who's posting about how, I don't know, I saw one the other day about how somebody was feeling so depressed that they had a plan, and everyone posted on there that they were calling the cops because that's the right thing to do, to be sure that that person doesn't complete that plan. Also, some social media sites have a process to report suicidal content. So, like if you're on Facebook, there's a person, I forget who it is, like somebody in the Facebook world to contact if someone's posting stuff about it, so that then they could reach out to that person. Instagram uses automated tools in the app to provide resources. So like if somebody is searching about self-injury or suicide because they want to see content, they then pop up resources for that person to click on instead of looking at the content. And what else? YouTube has a safety center. So if somebody's searching suicidal stuff on YouTube, it then pops up again with like those resources. So social media sites are working on having the kids look at resources, or adults look at resources instead of content, because like looking at somebody cutting themselves could be a trigger for somebody to then want to do that same thing. Let's see, what else did I have to say? I know this is for the kids, so kiddies. What do you guys have to say about all this? There's a lot going against you. Like, there's COVID. Like, let's talk from the top down, right? There's government, COVID, school and community, family, and then your own stuff. So that's like 6 layers of stuff that's all up against you, right? Yeah, and that's really hard to navigate. So if you're having these feelings, the first thing that I like to tell people is if you can't say anything about it, you can do something about it with yourself. So self-care is a priority, not a luxury. So what can I do today to help myself fill my cup is a question that I ask myself every day. If it's getting out of bed, that's good enough. If it's drinking a glass of water, that's good enough. And telling yourself that all of that is okay in the midst of the chaos. Maybe parents are saying, oh, well, you got to do this, this, and this, and this. Well, yeah, that's important, but your mental health is more important. So if you don't feel comfortable talking to your parents about your mental health at that point, you can tell them like, hey, like I just need some time to do this so that I feel okay, you know? And if you're on virtual school, that's really hard because you're at home and you're doing all this schoolwork, but like there's a lot of distractions and you might not feel good. So putting those buffers up like, I'm doing school from 11 to 2, and that's great. I'm going to take a shower at 12, and that's great. If you don't have energy to shower, you can sit in the shower. That's something I found on, I think it was Instagram. Somebody was sharing that they didn't have the energy to shower, but they knew they needed to. So just sitting in the shower and just letting the water drip could be really cool. And eating is important too. So if you are not hungry, you can make a smoothie, or you can have like your favorite food, like something light, just to put food in your body, because that's going to help you feel better. What else is good self-care in that state of mind? If you're tired, it's okay to rest. Resting is a productive thing that people can do. Resting is the most productive thing that somebody could do, because they know that they can't put in their all. And just acknowledging that you can't put in your all helps things feel better anyway. There's a therapy tool that I like to use called Name It to Tame It. So what you do is you name your emotion that you're experiencing, and what that does, it puts you in the place of your brain to think things through, and it automatically calms you down just a little bit. Like, I don't know if anybody's like been angry before and said, I'm angry, and then it just kind of helped in that moment bring the intensity down, so that then you can think your way through it. So I wanted to end our discussion on self-care. So what does everybody like to do for self-care? No, you got it, yeah.
I like to take baths and watch TV.
Yeah, taking baths is great. But that would be cool if you can project the TV in the bathtub, right?
I like to paint my nails.
Yeah.
I like to sleep.
Sleep. That's actually a good thing to do. And when you're a teenager, your body's still growing, so you might need more sleep. So if you're feeling tired and that's something that you think is going on, get more sleep and see how you feel. And then that can rule out that depression, right? Because you're growing and changing. And like, I know that I needed 15 hours of sleep. Like, I took naps, I slept 12 hours every day. Like, that's because I was growing, not because I was depressed at that time. There's other times that I could talk about where depression sits in, but at that time, yeah.
Exercise is a good way.
Yeah.
If you're
So how
angry.
many of you like to exercise? How many people hate exercise? Yeah, so it's more, so exercise, I like to say, is really, really good for you because it produces those happy hormones, right? But if you can't exercise for any way, like if you're limited in motion, if you have a physical disability, if you are tired and just can't do it, I like to say movement. So like taking a walk or doing some stretches, like anything like that could be really, really helpful because all of that produces the happy hormone that comes out. It's called serotonin. The happy hormone. What else does anyone like to do for self-care?
I like to clean.
Yeah? That's good. I love this talk.
For me, I used to get really overwhelmed with my schoolwork. So after a while, I would look forward to walking on the nearby bridge by my house. And then recently, I changed it from walking to roller skating at the nearby track
cool.
and singing. So
That's
fun.
awesome. Yeah, something to look forward to, right? Like a positive reward.
I play basketball.
Basketball, that's cool.
Yes.
Can you do a slam dunk? Yeah. So does anyone have any questions about what to do in certain situations? Because I think that would be a good ending to our conversation of like, give me a scenario and then I can talk about what ways you can help yourself through that scenario. You have one?
So say you have a friend and they're like, because they would always wear long sleeve shirts, and today you see them wearing a short sleeve shirt and you see like cuts on their arms. What would you say? Like, what would you say to them?
That one's tough, okay? Because depends on if it's fresh. So if you notice that there's like a fresh cut, I would then put myself in the scenario and asking them if they're okay. Hey, how are you doing? And then if it's not fresh, I think I would wait, because you don't want to like bring that out in somebody, because that's their story to share. But just checking in on them is a good thing to do too. Hey, how's it going? How's life at home? You know, like asking open-ended questions, like how is your life at home? How are you feeling today? And finding a feeling word, not good. Good is not a feeling word, and fine is not a feeling word, and bad is also not a feeling word. We often say, yeah, I'm good, I'm fine. No, not a feeling word. So you might want to say something like, if you see it in their face where they're looking sad in that situation, I notice you look sad. Is everything okay? And then maybe I would also, if they don't look sad and they look like they're feeling okay, I would then compliment them on their shirt. Be like, hey, that's such a cool shirt, because then you're acknowledging their bravery to share their story on their, like wear their heart on their sleeve kind of thing. So I think it would depend on the scenario. Do you have a specific situation that happened with?
Oh no, I was just like curious.
Oh, okay. So like I guess there's like three situations, right? The first is if it's a fresh, like you see like fresh wounds, like bloody, I don't know what a fresh cut looks like. It's probably bloody and red and probably swollen, right? That's when I would say like, hey, are you doing okay? How's life at home? I'm here if you need me. Because that's all you need to say, like, I'm ready to listen, and then people just vomit their life out. The second situation is if it's not fresh and they're like normal, like not normal, but like scars or scabs or something that looks older, I'd say, you know, I like your shirt. And is everything going okay? And then the third situation, I'd be like, hey, tell me about what life is like at home, you know, and like something like, tell me about what's going on. And just being like, hey, I notice you look XYZ, you know, sad, happy, angry, worried, what else, or hurt, shame. I notice you look XYZ, tell me about it. That's like the sentence structure I would use, you know, because you're pointing out what they look like, and then you're validating the ability for you to listen, you know, so like I'm here for you when you're ready kind of thing. Yeah, that one's tough without a specific scenario. But yeah, I would call them out, but that's just me. Be like, hey, what's going on? But yeah, actually a lot of people want you to notice, like, because that's like kind of like a, hey, I need help. Like I'm wearing this on my sleeve, so I need help. So some people want you to say something. So like, I don't know if anybody's done this before, but I know in situations when I was younger, I would say like something positive to then like get somebody's attention, and then or do something to get somebody's attention so that then I can share my story. Like I don't know what an example is, but like that's probably an example of like somebody like all of a sudden wearing short sleeve shirts and being like, okay, well I'm gonna wear this so that then I can share my story. So yeah. Yes. Is it a specific family member?
Like my grandmother.
Okay. So I would continue to say, like, I would name the feelings as they are for them, because, like, you know, sometimes people don't know how they're feeling. A lot of times I get patients who come in my room and say, like, oh, I'm okay, but they don't actually know how to identify what they're feeling. So if you notice that they're sad, or if you notice that they're grieving, or if you notice that they're worried, I would name it for them and say, like, I see that you're worried. Are you okay? Or I see that you look sad. I'm here to listen if you need anything. And then you can give them resources. Like, I've had kids put, like, the suicide crisis line, and I work with veterans, so, like, the Veterans Crisis Hotline and some other resources on the refrigerator, just to, like, put it out there that if anybody needs it, they could use it. And it's, like, not like it's a discreet way of saying, like, you can reach out to these people if you need that help, but we're an open household to be able to talk about this situation. So, and sometimes older people need help identifying their feelings. Everybody needs help identifying their feelings, including myself sometimes, you know, because, like, you might see something, but it's actually not what they're feeling or what they're experiencing. So, like the check-in, you know, like, I like mental health check-ins. Like, a mental health check-in is, for me, is like, how are you feeling? And what's one positive thing about your day today? So that then you can start to cultivate those conversations of, like, if you are feeling sad, okay, well, look at the positive here, so that then you can start to change the way you think. They say that practicing gratitude helps alleviate depression. They've done MRI studies on people who didn't take medication and didn't practice gratitude, and then people who only practiced gratitude, and then people who only took medication. Guess which group did better? Did you hear that? I didn't hear that. The gratitude group, yeah. The people with medicine did well, but not as good as the gratitude group, which was, like, super cool to see, right? And then some protective factors are your relationships with God. You know, like, that's a huge protective factor. And being involved in the church, like, all of you being here right now, is a huge, huge thing. That's awesome. And having the relationships that you have is a protective factor. Being involved in school is a protective factor. In sports and doing hobbies and exercising. Risk factors for depression are substance abuse in the household, marital problems, absence of supervision, like not necessarily like you're not, like, that you're not there ever. Not that you, like, go to work and then come back, but, like, that you're not there ever. And genetic, you know, like, if there's a family history of depression, anxiety, completion of suicide is also a risk factor, you know, in families. Like, it can pass down from generation to generation. So if you have, like, a great grandpa who committed suicide, then you have your grandpa who maybe have attempted, then you have your dad that maybe has thought about it, and then you have you. So that, like, all kind of just passes itself down, which is crazy to think about, but it's true. And then another risk factor is like isolation. So, like, if you're, like, isolated, like, if your family is isolated, away from community, if you are isolated and away from community, that could be a risk factor too. There's, like, a lot of things that I could talk about with this topic, but basically, like, the main points to get from it is that it's okay to talk about it with anybody, and it's okay to say that you're feeling stressed, and it's okay to say that you're feeling depressed. And you don't have to fix it in the moment, but just acknowledging that that feeling is there and being with it and holding its hand and saying, hey, like, I got you, is like the really best thing that you could do. If you don't feel comfortable talking about it, that's okay. But, you know, at some point, sharing it with somebody, like at least having one person on your team of people that you can share this stuff with is so important. So think about who's on your team and who you share things with. Any one of you.
I just want to add that it's a blessing for all of us, not just the young people, to be a part of a church family.
Yeah.
And I don't want, sometimes even myself, I neglect that and forget that you have people who you can talk to. And I would encourage our young people, and even myself and other parents who are having difficulty, we're not raising our hands, but we are having difficulty with our children and ourselves being anxious, being depressed, being sad, however we put it. It's a difficult time, but all of us are isolated now where we're not coming out to church to worship like we normally do.
Right.
But I would say once church is open, let's get to know at least one adult. This is for young people who you really feel comfortable with, in case you don't feel comfortable talking with your parents. I know a lot of them, mine doesn't feel comfortable with me. And but I would like to emphasize that get to know one adult in the church who you really feel comfortable with, who when you do feel low, whether sad or depressed, however you want to term it, that you could call and say, you know, I feel so sad, it's been a couple of days and I feel like killing myself or whatever. And just to talk to that adult, and you know, they can pray with you, they can be an intermediator between your parents and you. You might not feel comfortable enough to talk with your parents, but this adult, you can go to your parents, and especially because of the West Indies culture, it's really hard.
Yeah.
The communication most of the time is not there. But that person can actually speak with your parents and let them know that you're feeling this way, with your permission, of course, or if you just want somebody to just talk to, but just reach out to that individual. So get to know somebody when we're all back together.
Yeah,
Because
and
we're really being blessed.
I think right now is really challenging because we're all wearing masks and we all, I don't know, like everybody else going out, but I don't go out still, except for to work and to here and to home, and it's very isolating and it's weird. Like, we're in the weirdest time of life. Like, I've talked to people who are older and have said that this was like the craziest thing that they've ever experienced in their life. Like, do you all feel that way? Like, this is like crazy. And there's this trauma that's happening right now in our world that is affecting all of us, whether you've got COVID, whether you didn't get COVID, whether your beliefs and your political values and all of that stuff. It's just, there's just this big trauma that's happening with everything that's going on. And it trickles from the top down, and that's how trauma is. And it's important to continue to having those conversations about it's okay, we're getting through this together, because we don't know what the lasting impacts of mental health are going to be from now moving forward. We don't know. But now is also like a really strange time for mental health professionals, because I've had the most calls for mental health stuff that I've ever had in my 7 years of life doing this work. And my colleagues who have done this work for 30, 40 years that I know very well have said the same thing, that this is like the most important and important time for mental health, because now people are able to access it and talk about it. And it's just been crazy. Like, this whole thing is weird. Like, I don't know how to counsel people in this situation because it's just so strange. But what I do say to people is that keep your loved ones close, take care of yourself, put up those buffers to help yourself navigate this, like painting your nails and calling your friends and exercising and playing basketball and sleeping and just continuing to do all of that to preserve your mental health. Yes.
It's so ironic. The kids, they all have a lesson that they study each week, and this week's lesson the point it was talking about dealing with death and depression. And we had a scenario in the middle school class. The middle school class, it was talking about how does someone, if they're dealing with depression, what would you tell them? And it's very important for us, if we read our Sabbath school lessons, do the activities, continue to read our Bible, because there's so many words of encouragement in the Bible. There's so many promises. A lot of people have a favorite promise that they memorize. They put it on the refrigerator, they put it on their desk, they put it in the office, they put it in the frame. But it's so important to keep those Bible promises in the forefront of your brain. So when you have a thought of depression, you can just go back to your promise.
Yeah,
and it
then
helps you a lot.
parents, you can remind them of that, and then reminding yourself of that too. Like, hey, go look at this promise right here, and just like inspirational like conversations, and like, hey, have you read the Bible lately? No? Okay, well, go to this page and see what you read. Like, that's like a great buffer too, to help navigate that. And then there's different types of depression too. Like, there's seasonal depression and there's major depression. So, like, this might be a season. Well, seasonal is like the seasons, like fall and winter, but like I think of seasons as like, this is a COVID season, right? Like, we're in this like weird time where we need to make sure that we're buffering ourselves so that then we don't fall into depression. But if you're in depression, depending on what symptoms you're experiencing, it's important to go and ask for professional help. Yes.
To know that life is not easy. Life in general or normally is hard, right? And there are going to be challenges that you will face. And learning how to meet these challenges, how to navigate them is very important. Because as you said, with every season in your life, you're going to face challenges. And if each challenge is going to hit you down and you are going to be staying down, that's where the depression comes in. So it's important that we know how to deal with conflict, with challenges, not run away from it, but face it and implement strategies to, that will strengthen us and give us victory.
And that's another conversation to have about how to sit with your feelings as they are without running away from them, and to look at this challenge as an opportunity, but acknowledging that it is a challenge and that it does suck, and it's like the hardest thing of life right now. So what you said there is also another conversation to have with the kids, about, my gosh, like, this is a challenge, and if you're feeling depressed, that's okay. Let's get you help. Did you have something?
Also, lastly, and I just had this question, based off of the counselings that you've had and that you've talked to parents, and this is basically for parents, are we adequately preparing our children for society today? In other words, I hear that there are stressors, when parents push, you need to stay involved in your studies. You need to stay, parents do that to prepare. There's a 19-year-old that just shot up a FedEx and murdered 8 people.
Yeah.
19 years old. 19. And I'm saying that like that because of the simple fact that this young man did not have the things to adequately prepare him for when a company said, we don't need you anymore, you're fired.
Yeah, so he like broke mentally. So I think that without conversation of mental health at all is what ill prepares kids. And, like, there might have been some trauma in that kid's life that made him break like that. And then also there might have been a mental health, like, disorder, like maybe like a schizophrenia or something like that made that kid break, right? But we're seeing all of these people who are committing violent crimes who have severe mental illness. So if you continue to talk about mental health, look at your own genetics and have those conversations about self-care and getting the help that you need at the times that are appropriate, that's being prepared. Because like, there's lots of pressures in life, you know? And like, everybody has dealt with it differently, and now is like a really strange time where no one knows how to deal with it. So people are just like having these like episodes of like chaos because they're mentally unable to handle those situations. But there's also mental health. So his mental health, was it a he? I think it was a he, yeah. I assumed, sorry. It's typical for males to have firearm crime than for females, but that's why I assumed. Shouldn't have assumed, but yeah, so like his mental health was probably never talked about. That kid's mental health was probably not nurtured. And like, how did he get a gun? Like, that's another question. Like, and having conversations about like everything that's going on at age appropriate levels. So like the guns violence stuff, the COVID stuff, the climate of politics, what else is going on? Sex trafficking. Gosh, yes. And sexual abuse and teen bullying and internet cyberbullying and all of these heavy issues at age appropriate levels. So you're gonna have these conversations throughout someone's lifespan, but at different levels. So like a 6-year-old, you might have a conversation about their bodies and how to not share their bodies, and they share their bodies when they feel comfortable to share their bodies. Then at 13, you might have a conversation of, oh my gosh, your body's changing. You might have crushes on people, and you might get your period if you're a female, or you might get this happening if you're a male, right? And then at older levels, it's more intense. But yeah, like having these conversations about mental health is so important. Yes, sir.
I'm thinking some of this can have like a negative effect also, because society now, it's like we coddle the kids so much, and we prepare them to be so soft, and like anything, they can't handle anything. It's like, okay, when you play, oh, everyone gets an award. Oh, well, and we just make everything to just pacify them, and we don't teach them any toughness, any mental fortitude. So can it have a negative effect also? Because sometimes I hear these things and I look at my kids and they just look at me because they know I'm like,
so
that's not happening in our house, because
so
you have to be prepared.
you know, we're not like, if you have conversations about mental health and validating their experiences, that doesn't mean that their behavior is acceptable if you're talking about something like that.
No, what I'm saying is, like, for everything, like, we don't want anyone to get upset. We want everyone to be happy. So we'll say, if it's 15 kids, everyone gets an award. Instead of saying, no, son, you lost. You got to try harder next time. Oh, you have to do better. You got an 89, that's your grade. You can't get the extra point to get an 8. That's what I'm saying. Because sometimes we like, oh, we don't want them to do something crazy, so let's just give it to them.
Yeah. Yeah, so it's having that connection with them and validating them in their emotion, and then when they're out of the emotion, that's when you have the conversation of like, here's what we could do better, or here's how you can navigate this situation. But you don't want to have those conversations when they're in emotion.
But you know, it's like the tough
That's
love
the
has
problem.
gone away. That's the thing. It's like there's no tough love anymore.
Yeah, so that's the problem. So like the people are starting to notice the mental health effects of not validating the emotions in that experience, and people are feeling completely dismissed. So it's important to make sure that everybody's calmed down before you give that, you know, like it's weird, you know, like we're starting to see all of these kids come up and having all of these big feelings, and that's okay. And the tough love is good, but when they're crying and feeling depressed and having all of these thoughts of killing themselves, that's not the right time. So it's all about timing and making sure that everybody is calm and well fed before those conversations. Yes, sir.
So this is just like a comment to Mr. Roscoe's like tough love comment. Sometimes, like for example, this teacher done give me 20% on a test. So sometimes that's the best that you could do. And sometimes the parents say, why didn't you get a C or a D? You could have done better.
Yeah.
But sometimes that's the best that you could do. Sometimes participation awards are necessary. And then sometimes the parents act like now is just not the time that it's necessary. So.
Yeah. So, like, we all have to remember that we have good intentions and that we do the best we do with the resources we have. And we might not understand what somebody else is going through unless we ask. So that's why these conversations are important. So, yeah, everyone knows, even the kid knows that they could do better than the 20%, but they must feel a sense of shame and embarrassment that they're unable to figure out why, you know? And that's why it's important for parents to help navigate through all of that. Yeah. Does anyone else have any other questions or comments, concerns? Okay. Well, thank you for letting me come in and have a conversation. If anyone feels like they need to talk to me, you can hand out my contact information, all that good stuff.
Thank you, Ms. Robinson. I appreciate it. I think you guys asked a lot of really good questions. I know I have a list of questions in my head that I want to ask, but yes, very good. I don't know, Roscoe, if you felt that your question, Brother Roscoe, that you felt that your question was answered, but I think the important thing that she was trying to relate was that, yes, tough love is healthy, and I think it's very needed, and I think that we have overwhelmingly focused so much, as you were saying, on being careful with the feelings of our young people that we've neglected truth, if you will. And so you have, as a teacher, I see that I feel as though we make so many excuses for some of the behaviors that we see in our students, and we don't bring them to a place of self-responsibility. But what I like that you explained to us, Ms. Robinson, is that it's important that when our young people are experiencing whatever negative emotion it is, whether it's failure, whether it's whatever it might be, in that moment of feeling failure, we don't say, how dare you? How could you do this? What's wrong with you? You should have done better. But we just tell them, hey, you did it. You know, you're all right. You're going to survive this. And then in another time, after they've chilled out, maybe they've watched the show, maybe they ate some food, whatever it is, they've chilled out. Now we can have this discussion like, okay, but I know you could do better with this. I know, I've seen you do great things. I know you could have done better. Then at that point, we have that tough love discussion. And I think that's been neglected. As far as what I'm seeing, I'm not a parent, I don't know, but as far as what I'm seeing as a teacher, I feel like we have sort of taken that out of the equation and just tried to do the pampering, if you will. So, but that was a very good question. Thank you. I wanted to also emphasize how our speaker talked about validating our young people and acknowledging their emotions. I remember as a first-time teacher, my first year teaching, I had a young person say to me, I'm depressed. And my response to her was not the right response. My response to her was, what you got to be depressed about? We should not be responding this way. If a person tells you that, I'm upset about such and such, you don't tell them that's stupid or that's silly. If someone says, I don't want to go out because it's scary out there, they're killing black people, you don't say, you don't respond with what to you seems like, your child is being ridiculous or exaggerating. You don't respond in that way, but you have to acknowledge that your child has real feelings. And despite the fact that you think it's silly, that's not what's on Front Street right now. What's important is that your child feels how they feel. Acknowledge it as truth and address it. And in so doing, then you're validating that, okay, I respect that you're a human being who has emotions, and I want to help you navigate those emotions. So I thank you for touching on that. We are going to go over some crisis hotlines, but first I want to talk about identifying feelings. I think in our community, sometimes we learn to sort of throw it on your shoulder and keep trucking. I remember my experience in college, I was just going through so many different things, but in our culture, we just learned that you don't complain, you don't cry, you just keep going. And I remember one day I'm driving home from work, and I just broke down in tears. And I couldn't understand why. Why am I crying? I don't even know why. I called my sister, and she says, yep, that happens. Your body is just pouring out. It's finally getting, the stresses out that you've been holding on to. And the reason for that breakdown was because I had never identified, oh, I'm stressed out right now. Oh, I'm going through something right now. Oh, I'm hurt right now. So it's important for us to take the time to identify what we're feeling and to ask ourselves, why am I feeling this way? Whether it's something as serious as depression or whether it's something as light as, someone said something and it made you angry. The other day I was on the phone with a brother in Christ, and he had said something. I had got a verse wrong. We're studying verses, and I got a verse wrong, but I said the verse right. I just missed the word "and" in the verse, and he was like, "Oh, you said it wrong." And I remember just being so like, "Are you serious? Like, are you really gonna, tell me I said it wrong because this one word?" And I remember being bothered by this, and instead of just being bothered and, keeping it, I had to ask myself, why is this bothering me? What is this rooted in? You have to navigate those feelings. Ask yourself, try to get down to the root of it. Once you get down to the root of it, then you can begin to let it go, okay? All right, very good, very good, very good. Thank you, Ms. Robinson, for your discussion. I hope that it helped some of you all. Can you go to the next? Oh. I want to touch a little bit on self-care. I feel bad because some of my slides talk about some of the things that you said that, no, but it talks about some of the things that you said is not considered self-care. So I want you to know that self-care is not selfish. It's not wrong for you to take a time away from whoever and to say, I need a minute for me. It's not selfish. There are different things that you can do. Again, my thing is not working, so you won't be able to answer this question on your phone. But some things that you could do, take time for yourself, stay hydrated, putting your health first, going outside, fueling your body, being genuine, practicing forgiveness, acknowledging as we talk about your feelings. One of you guys did talk about warm bath. Taking a walk is good, cuddles, crafty. I think I did have something else. I guess I don't have it. Maybe I took it off. But yes, anything that makes you feel good. Whatever makes you feel good. We don't want to spend hours binge watching Netflix. That's not really going to cleanse you, right? But you want to do something that sort of puts you in a state of thinking. So journaling is good. Taking a walk is good. If you're a crafty person, get into crafts. I think some of the Wrights have green thumbs. That's an awesome thing. If you like to plant. That gets you thinking, right? We want to do those type of things. Taking a nap is very healthy. I think one of my standing girls mentioned that. These are things that you guys want to focus on. Is there another slide, or is that the last one? That's it? Treat yourself, right. So do something for you. Do something for you. And there was a list that I saw that said that you can even do self-care 5 minutes a day. Just 5 minutes a day. Take the time to journal something down or sing a song that just lifts you up. Just daily. Take care of your inner health, okay? The one thing that I want to tell you guys is prayer. Prayer in and of itself is a conversation with God. And I can be honest. I feel like I can be honest with God and say, listen, Lord, I'm really struggling with this thing. I really didn't like this person when they said this, that. It's a conversation I can have with God that I sometimes feel I can't have with another person. So that's something to consider. To my parents, I do want to say, as she was telling us that it's important for you to just have that conversation with your child, whether it's validating their emotions, whether it's acknowledging them, whether it's just talking to them about how to deal with some of the things that we see on the news right now. Those conversations are important. Sometimes it might feel a little too heavy, but it's needed. Scripture tells us to raise up a child in the way that they should go. And when you do so, what will happen? They will not depart from it, exactly. So even if your child stumbles along the way, that's okay. That's okay. Because they're going to remember what you taught them, how you told them to navigate those emotions, how you taught them. They'll have those tools. And so even when they stumble, they're going to come back. They're going to say, you know what, they're going to be able to pick themselves up and say, my mother taught me that I should pray. My mother taught me that I need to take a walk when I'm feeling this way. So those things are needed. All right, so I want to thank again our speaker for coming in and sharing all this with us. I did have some other, weren't there some other slides? I had some contacts as to who we could contact. There's not another slide? Interesting. Okay, I do have a hotline that I wanted you guys to write down if you needed to talk to someone. I do have her phone number if you, okay.
So yes, the suicide hotline is a great place to call, but who hates the phone? Who would rather text? There's a text crisis hotline. They're great. I think you text HOME, HOME, to 741-741. You just text the word home, you wait, and then they talk with you over text.
Very good, very good. So there's a text hotline, there's a suicide hotline. We also do have some local therapists. If you need to talk to someone, we have some Adventist local therapists, and even in this church, Shante Thomas, we have her who's a therapist as well. If anyone needs someone to speak to, I have those contacts. I'm so sorry, I thought I put them on the board, but maybe I must have accidentally deleted the slide. If you need any information, I will share it with you. I will be sure to post it as well next Sabbath, so that way you have it. Let us go ahead and close out. Let's stand to our feet. We're going to close in prayer. Elder Roscoe, do you mind if I ask you to close us out? I'm sorry. I know it's kind of yeah, you can come on up.
Before we pray, I just want to thank you again for coming out, sharing your knowledge with us here. Didn't she do a great job? Yes. Let's give her. All right, let us pray now. Dear Heavenly Father, thank you for the opportunity to come into your house of worship, Lord, to get out the house. What a great feeling. Lord, as we talk about depression and all the things, we know that the devil is busy to try to make us feel depressed. So, Lord, help us to just look to your resources, read your Bible, read your promises, and do all the other things that we can do that we can feel better and we can concentrate on you. Lord, save us in your kingdom when you come, so we wouldn't have to worry about depression and all these things, everything negative we wouldn't have to worry about anymore. Thank you for sending your son, Jesus, to die on the cross for us, to save us for our sins. So help us to just reflect on that and reflect on heaven, and help us to just be the light, a light shining to tell others about your wondrous love, your grace, your mercy, and all the good things. In the precious name of Jesus, I pray. Amen.
Thank you, brother. I want to thank you all who came out. I appreciate you. We have some refreshments in the back, so do not be in a rush to leave, but go and enjoy those. Okay, blessings to you.